have 90 minutes together today. We're going to be, we've got a very packed agenda, and we're going to be running through first of all, we'll hear from Thierry Picard, who is from the ASToN Secretariat, the head of unit. We're going to talk through the ASToN journey in less than 5 minutes, just give those of you who we haven't met yet a bit of a whistle-stop tour. We're going to share some insights, and these are just our top 5 that we've picked out for today, but these are 5 of many, many insights that we've picked up from the work. And then we're going to wrap up with a summary and some words on what's next. But before we begin, a few housekeeping rules. First of all, we have interpretation. So this is a bilingual English and French event. You can see in the bottom of your screen, there's an interpretation button. If you click that and select the language that you need, then we'll be providing interpretation for the whole event. I'd ask you to please mute when you're not speaking, or we may mute you, but of course do come off mute when you have questions, and we like quite an interactive event, so there'll be opportunities to speak throughout. And I'd love you to use the chat as we go. Any questions that you have, any comments, we'll be picking those up along the way. So to get us started, I'd love you in the chat to tell us, where are you joining from around the world? I'm Abby Freeman. I'm going to be your co-host for today. I'm joining from London, UK. And just a little bit about me. I have been invited onto the team by Samina and Thierry, who you'll be hearing from, as the innovation coach for this work, and I'm co-founder of an innovation practice called Brink. So really happy to be your host for today. We've got people joining from UK, we've got people joining from Spain, from Edinburgh, really good to see you. We've got people joining from Nigeria, hi Elani, from Hamburg, from Paris, so quite a global bunch. Keep them coming, it's really great to see you all joining, and so lovely to see some familiar faces, some old and new friends, and some that we haven't met yet. So if you're new to ASToN, we will make sure that we look after you today. I'd also love to hear from you in the chat about, what do you want to get out of the session? Why are you here? Perhaps you're here because you're someone who's in a local authority who's doing similar work. Perhaps you're here because you're one of the cities and you want to hear a little bit about what's next and the summary of what we found. Perhaps you're just curious and you've turned up to just listen in and learn more. So let us know in the chat what you would like to get from today as well. Final thing from me is the session is going to be recorded. The recording has already begun, as you probably heard, so that's just a heads up for you. All right, with that said, I think we're ready to begin. So it's my real honor and pleasure to welcome to the floor Thierry Picard, who is the head of unit of ASToN Secretariat. And really, without Thierry, none of us would be here today. So Thierry, over to you.
Thank you, Abby. Hello everyone. Je vais m'exprimer en français, donc vous pouvez switcher en bas de votre écran de l'anglais au français si vous le souhaitez. Bonjour, merci d'avoir répondu à notre invitation. Nous arrivons à la fin d'une aventure qui a vu travailler ensemble pendant 3 années 11 villes africaines. Alors pour ceux qui ne nous connaissent pas, parce que je crois que le public est mélangé et qu'une partie du public connaît ASToN, a fait partie d'ASToN, et puis une partie ne nous connaît pas. Donc pour ceux qui ne nous connaissent pas, je vais vous dire en 2 mots comment est né ce projet et quelles étaient ses intentions. Ce projet est né de rencontres entre les divisions ville et numérique de l'Agence française de développement et du programme européen URBACT. Ce programme, depuis les années 2000, permet aux villes européennes de se mettre en réseau. Les réseaux sont composés en général d'une dizaine de villes pour travailler ensemble à la résolution d'un problème qui leur est commun. Santé, inclusion sociale, tourisme, questions environnementales, emploi des jeunes, logement, étalement urbain, etc. Bref, tous les sujets qui sont du domaine de la compétence des villes. Au fil des années, URBACT a développé une méthodologie de travail autour de la planification urbaine, à la fois basée sur l'enrichissement transnational, la confrontation avec les pairs d'autres pays, d'autres villes, et le transfert de bonnes pratiques, et à la fois au niveau local, par la mobilisation de tous les acteurs locaux concernés par la problématique et par la prise en compte de la réalité multidimensionnelle d'une problématique. On ne peut pas traiter de la question du logement sans prendre en compte les dimensions sociales, les dimensions économiques, environnementales, spatiales de la question, par exemple. Autour de la question de la transition numérique, qui était alors un axe fort de travail de l'AFD, l'Agence française de développement, l'idée était de voir dans quelle mesure cette méthode, développée avec des villes européennes et qui avait fait ses preuves sur le continent européen, pourrait être utile dans le cadre d'un projet panafricain. Il s'agissait vraiment d'un projet pilote dans le sens où nous n'avions pas de modèle sur lequel nous reposer. Urbact n'était jamais sorti des frontières de l'Europe et il ne pouvait s'agir, bien entendu, de transposer purement et simplement une méthodologie Urbact développée avec des villes européennes en Europe, de la déplacer et de la transposer dans un autre contexte. L'idée était plutôt, tout en conservant ces principes, l'échange, la co-création, la participation, les aspects multiniveaux et plurifacteurs, et ces éléments structurants, la baseline study et la roadmap co-construite avec les acteurs locaux, et le plan d'action local, concret et réaliste, d'inventer et co-construire au fil de l'eau avec les villes participantes une approche spécifique. 11 villes de 11 pays différents, de toutes les régions d'Afrique, de l'Est, de l'Ouest, du Nord et du Sud de l'Afrique, de tailles différentes, parfois les villes capitales, parfois non, de langues et de contextes culturels différents, se sont prêtées à cet exercice. Elles vous en parleront un peu plus tard. Toutes avaient identifié une problématique urbaine qu'elles souhaitaient traiter dans le cadre de ce projet en s'aidant du numérique. Pour les unes, collecte de l'impôt, pour les autres, gestion des déchets, relevés cadastraux, engagement des citoyens, etc. Ce sont les résultats de cette aventure de 3 ans que nous avons souhaité partager avec vous aujourd'hui à l'issue de ce voyage. Je te redonne la parole, Abby, et soyez encore une fois les bienvenus à cette rencontre.
Thank you so much, Thierry, for that overview and reminder of where we've come from. So I'm going to just add to that by giving you, those of us who weren't there from the start, a bit of a tour of ASToN from the top. I'm going to keep it brief, but if you have questions or there's anything you'd like to know more about, then just ask us in the chat. So ASToN, here's the overview. There's a map of the 11 cities you can see, and they originally all applied, as Thierry said, with a problem in mind, a digital, with an idea for a digital solution. But as you can see from how we structured the phases, we had quite a long period where we were looking into what is the actual problem, really defining it well. And we created a baseline study, which you can download online, that talked about that. For the innovation nerds amongst us, we used quite a standard double diamond approach with a bit of a test and learn sort of iteration loop on the end of our whole process. We had a phase where we explored and dug into the problem. And then we had our phase 2, which was where we went out and engaged with residents, with citizens, with academia, with journalists, with every sector you could think of in each city area to really start to understand the problem from different angles and how we might tackle it, and start to build an early version of a prototype for a solution. And then we experimented. Each city had financing, and they also had the support of an innovation coach and a thematic expert, which we'll talk about a little bit later, to support that experiment. So as you can see from some of these photos, in phase 1, we kicked off in real life, as was the normal thing to do at that time, with an in real life event. We had mayors who all came together and signed a convention. But then you may remember around the end of 2019, early 2020, the pandemic hit. And for us as a network, you know, we really set out to build a network of change makers, of like-minded peers who wanted to learn together. The pandemic really sort of disrupted the plan that we had, but also brought us all together. So we had to very quickly learn how to be together online. We had to very quickly learn how to support each other in, you know, through challenging times. And we added in a sort of phase 1.5, we called it at the time, for dealing with the pandemic. We then moved on to phase 2, which was all about learning, and everyone that applied to ASToN shares a mindset of wanting to collaborate with their citizens, wanting to innovate and test new ideas. And I've really noticed that everyone who joined ASToN has a curiosity to learn, not just with each other, but from each other. So the learning journey that we tried to create, and I think we succeeded in creating, was really about learning from each other as much as from experts that we were able to brought in, and who it's so great to see somewhere in the room today. We also had, as Thierry mentioned, these sort of thematic groups. So across the 11 cities, we started to cluster themes like mobility, like digital addressing, and we grouped together some of the cities that you'll be hearing about around those themes. In phase 3, as you can see from some of the images on the slide, that was where we really got out and about. You know, it's one thing sort of sitting and planning, it's another really getting out and testing with citizens and residents. And as you can see in each of those photos, that's either a photo of a sort of prototype being tested, an early stage of a digital tool being tested, or coming back and talking with politicians about what we were testing and learning. Despite the pandemic, as much as we could, we got together in real life. And what you can see in the images there is a visit to Kigali, where we went out in Kigali to visit Ampersand, which is an e-bike company that is scaling quite quickly there with the support of the city council. And we used a lot of post-it notes through the whole process. You know, this is quite a different way of working. It's more than just a piece of paper. It's about democracy of ideas. You know, each post-it note represents an idea. You can move them around, you can cluster them. And despite any kind of hierarchy, you know, a mayor can put an idea on a post-it note and so can a citizen. And on the board, those have the same weight. So we use those kind of methods a lot to really rethink how voices had the same weight in all of the processes that we were doing. We also got out and about to external conferences and events. And all of this was in order to sort of get to ideas, plans, sort of tested, building an evidence base for city teams to then be able to take what they'd learnt about their ideas for a solution to their problem back into their local authority in whatever sort of format was most appropriate. So what you can see here on the slide is an example from Kampala of their action plan that they then took back into their council. And we'll talk a little bit later about how those are being sort of picked up now. But I'd just like to give you some numbers to summarise sort of some of what we've been up to in ASToN. So through the 3 years now that we've been running, we've had 480 participants in training. I talked about that financial support that cities got to test their digital ideas, and we had over 420,000 euros invested in experimenting and testing those innovative solutions. I'm really proud to talk about the uptake of this. So it's still early days and we're still collecting the data, but you can see that 30% of the cities are already using methods and tools from the programme to design other urban policies and innovative services. So that's really what we want to see, these sort of new ways of working, new mindsets and skill sets. It's not just about this project and then done, it's more about how can we really expand those through local authorities. And 8 out of the 10 local action plans that I mentioned were validated by their city councils, are now included in their local strategies, which is a stat we're really proud of, but we'll hear from the cities what that means for them. We're still sort of counting the number of people reached in the cities, so bear with us on that. But what we do know is that over around 2.8 new public digital services per city are created or planned just for this year alone, which again is an average, so some are higher than that, which is really great. Okay, as part of all of the insights that we've been pulling together, we're really proud to launch today a knowledge hub. Part of what we really hope to do is to keep sharing what we've learned, even though our time on ASToN is coming to an end. And I'm going to pass over to Samstad team now, who are going to share the knowledge hub that we've created to share with you all of the insights that we've pulled together.
Thank you, Abby. So just a few words about the knowledge hub. It's the place, it's in the spirit of the experimentation. So as Abby mentioned, test first, learn, and then build on it. As this is the way ASToN worked, this knowledge hub, it's work in progress as we are still publishing more insights from the ASToN network. The knowledge hub, we have a version in English and in French, of course, and it's structured around two parts. The methods and tools, basically answering how the ASToN network was built, but also the tools that the cities use throughout their projects, and the what part, sorry, which is about stories and the good practices that emerged throughout the 2 years of the ASToN journey. I'm going to keep it short because I think for the best way to explore all this, it's for you to go and check the Knowledge Hub. And we also have a search page where you can, at the top, where you can go and just type the words that you are looking for, and you'll see all the stories, videos, case studies, and many more other things from the ASToN network. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andra and Samstad team. And we're just sharing the link in the chat for you now so that you can go and have a look for yourself. Okay, on the agenda today, we're going to move through 5 of the insights that we have gained from doing this work of building a network of cities, learning from each other, going through a sort of digital experiment and a digital transition. Here they are, these are the headlines, and we're going to tackle each of these in a slightly different way. Sometimes there'll be a panel, sometimes you'll be hearing directly from a city. But I'll just explain them briefly before we get stuck in. So our insights are, firstly, we found that there's a power to giving cities a framework for driving digital transformation. And by having a framework, that unlocked a lot of momentum and resources in the city teams. So we'll talk about building a framework. The second insight we found was that we talked about there being a pandemic in the way, but even without that, a rigid sort of learning program of 2 years was never going to work. And we realized quite early on that designing an adaptive learning journey that was responsive to the needs of cities was actually much more effective and enabled them to learn better, faster, and collectively, which is actually most important for us. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about our third insight, which was really about how do you build sustainable relations. So for a network to be a space for learning, it needs to be anchored in sustainable connections between people. You know, these aren't city teams, these are a whole load of individuals, and you'll meet some of them shortly. So a lot of this work was about how do you build what we call psychological safety, that sort of safe space online or in person, to be honest and share not just what's going well, but also what's not working, and sort of learn together from that. We'll talk about how we made the relationships more sustainable too. In our fourth insight, it's about experimentation as a tool for cities. There was a huge diversity in the cities that joined, and how they were set up to experiment. So, you know, we have from Benguerir that I think has 80,000 residents, right up to Lagos that has over 20 million. You know, that's a huge diversity just in the profile of the cities, let alone the city teams. So we learned it's important to focus on how you name an assumption that you're going to test, and how you go about that business of experimentation. And then for our final and fifth insight, we're going to talk about, you know, did this actually work? This was an experiment. The whole of ASToN was really the first of its kind. It was a pilot. And so we'll talk about, has this been a success? I'm going to ask you to go on mute. Thank you. And so without any further ado, I'm going to pass to you, Samina, who has really been the glue for ASToN. She's been in the Secretariat as the program coordinator, the project coordinator, sorry. And Samina is going to talk us through testimonial 1 with some insights from the cities as well.
Thank you very much, Abby, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. I can't believe this is actually happening and we are reaching the end of ASToN. And as Abby was saying, what I'm going to share with you is how we consider that ASToN put together a framework for the digital transition of African cities, and which are some of the specificities, if I can say so, of that that framework, knowing that, again, the digital transformation of cities is really the core of what we do. it must be said that at the beginning, ASToN was very much about smart cities, right? ASToN stands for African Smart Towns Network. And while there was a variety of definitions and ambitions at the beginning of ASToN among the cities, among the local authorities, about how they were using the idea of smart city as a way of engaging in technical solutions to transform urban services. Over the course of the project, we understood that it is much more beneficial to focus on the concept of digital transformation or transition because it focuses much more on the unique journey of each city rather than on an end state. And it takes more into consideration from our perspective, the human aspect, putting people right at the center of this journey. What you can see on the right side is the digital maturity assessment we did right at the beginning of ASToN. And as you can see, it's a variety of different situations and challenges. Each dot represents a city, and where we have circled several cities, it's because we consider that that's where the majority of cities are leaning. As Thierry was saying about, like the geographical variety and size of the cities, it was also the case when we started working with ASToN, as you can see, with a wide variety of cities. But nonetheless, the challenges that they were facing were pretty much similar. It was very much the case, the challenge of building digital capacities inside a municipality. It is a process that takes time, especially when some of municipalities we were working with had really limited human capacity. Many of them were really torn into the make or buy dilemma. And of course, when you have a lot of pressing issues and the urgency of resolving them all, how do you tackle that challenge? And of course, many of them were stuck in very much traditional ways of working, and with digitization being a risk of job loss in some municipalities. And later on, we'll see a short testimonial from the city of Niamey on how they found a solution for that. But before we do that, I would like to share with you now 2 testimonials from cities that will share a little bit more about their digital transition and how they overcome some of these challenges, what they learned from the process, knowing that these are cities that already had some digital projects or digital strategies in mind. First, we will hear from Kampala and Agnes Kawa, who is the local coordinator for ASToN in Kampala, and hopefully technology will be there with us. So let's see if we can play this properly.
My name is Agnes Kawa from Kampala Capital City Authority, and I'm also the project coordinator for ASToN in Kampala. From ASToN, Kampala has been able to come up with a digital mobility solution called Kampala Connect, also known as CLA Connect. With this digital solution, citizens will be able to improve their mobility experience through viewing real-time traffic information, incidents, road closures and diversions, and also receive feedback from the city authority. With the ASToN, we have been able to bring together various stakeholders in a group called Local Action Group. This group comprises of members from the public sector, private sectors, politicians, and also citizens. Them coming together to co-design a solution to solve an urban challenge has been a great contribution from ASToN. What we have learned from ASToN is experimentation. We have been able to experiment a digital tool, and through this, we shall be able to implement better digital products in future. Thank you.
And another testimonial coming this time from Ben Guerrier in Morocco.
Le projet ASToN nous a permis de résoudre le problème de communication entre la population et le centre hospitalier de Belgrade à travers la digitalisation de certaines prestations du centre hospitalier. Sans la participation du réseau ASToN, l'intégration de l'outil digital n'aurait peut-être pas avancé avec la même célérité, avec la convergence de toutes les parties prenantes sur une même solution digitale. La méthode ASToN est une méthode très efficace par l'implication de toutes les parties prenantes pour la définition de la problématique prioritaire et la proposition des solutions. Cette méthode est aussi efficace par l'outil d'expérimentation de la solution avec les futurs bénéficiaires et la prise en compte de leur feedback dans la solution finale. L'intégration des technologies numériques contribue énormément à la transformation digitale de la ville de Belgrade à travers l'amélioration des services rendus aux citoyens, l'amélioration des performances des prestations de la commune, optimisation des charges. Plusieurs exemples illustrent le succès de la transformation digitale à Belgrade. On peut citer le développement de l'application Bien Guérir, réalisée dans le cadre du projet ASToN, qui a été adopté par le délégué de la santé publique et le personnel médical et paramédical et qui a donné satisfaction lors de la phase d'expérimentation avec la société civile et les citoyens.
Just to sum up what we heard, there are a couple of key elements coming back again to the framework for the digital transition that we have put in place that I think are really important. What we heard from these stories is first of all that the solutions are fully owned by the municipality. In both cases, the city council has voted for their integration into the wider strategic plan of the city. But we also, municipalities were able to no longer find themselves into that dilemma between buying or making, but to design adapted solutions, which again are fully owned by them. They worked with a group of stakeholders, as both Agnes and Musaid were explaining, that ensure that the project is on one hand followed through by and is owned by a wider group, but and that they all stay committed, but also it ensured that there is a continuation between the initial problem analysis, between the solutions that were tested and the final action plan that was designed. And last but not least, especially in cases and in cities where decentralization is still an ongoing process, being part of a group of cities empowered some municipalities to work with other national bodies. And this is the quote that we have here from Niamey, from the local coordinator, Ousmane Maman, that works with the municipality, where he is sharing how they were able to not only link with the national agency for the information technology, but also to build a partnership for them that would enable the municipality to share and to transform some of the jobs within the municipality. So these are all great results. At the same time, of course, we asked ourselves, as ASToN was coming close to an end, what we would do differently, because of course it might be said all is not perfect, and if we were to start again, we would definitely do some things differently. We worked, again, you already heard it several times, with a very diverse network, and as ASToN was an experiment, I think in that sense it was a very good choice that we made. Probably if we were to start it again, we would narrow it down in terms of the themes that we covered, maybe in terms of the digital maturity of the cities, because the more elements cities have in common, probably the more also they have to share. Another element, it's linked, of course, with the timeline. If could erase COVID, of course, and the heavy impact it had on 2020 and 2021 on the project. we would definitely want to do that, but there is another bigger question that begs to be asked, which is, when do you let go? You heard that 8 of the 10 action plans that were designed, drafted by the municipalities in the network were already voted by the city councils. But for the time being, only local money has been found to finance that project. So there is a part of us that we would definitely have liked to accompany the cities even further in the process of looking for funding. And in that sense, maybe building stronger links with funding bodies from even earlier on in the program to make sure that the solutions are not only bankable, because we know they are, but they are also banked up by and backed up by investors. So these are just some of the highlights about building a framework for digital transitions for African cities. If you want to hear more, to read more, there are the amazing case studies that have been prepared by Samstat team that look into the situation of each city case by case, and also the city handbook that showcases all the tools that we have put together throughout the 3 years of the ASToN journey. I will stop here. Apologize if I have been speaking too fast, and I will pass it over back to you, Abby, now.
Thank you, Samina. And we've had some questions coming in. Utam Budasaini, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I would encourage cities to exchange with you and get back to you. I see that Agnes has also very generously shared her contact details for you to carry on that exchange. So please do keep the conversation going as we move on. So we're going to move on now to Insights 2 about designing a learning journey that's adaptive and responsive to the city's needs, and our third insight that's about building sustainable relations. And I'm really pleased to pass to my colleague Brink, who is one of the innovation coaches on the ASToN project. Constanza, over to you.
Thanks so much, Abby. I'm so happy to be here. It's been such a joy to work on this program. And I think what Samina and Abby spoke about was really, all of the work that we were doing was really thinking about how do we drive and support momentum across digital transformation, specifically across so many contexts in so many cities. And we kind of have to throw ourselves back to when we started, because we really didn't know, we'd had a sense of the range of problems, but we needed to dig into them. We needed to, there was a lot of uncertainty as to what exactly the experimentation was going to look like. So that also meant that we didn't really know what skills and capacity were going to be most useful and most needed by cities at which point of the project and the initiative. So we really designed the approach so that cities could learn from one another about the problems and the different solutions, but also from each other, right? So not just about their problems, but also about what others were doing to tackle them at different stages. So what we really tried to do was foster a network and a journey that had learning at the core, so that we weren't coming up front and saying this is what you need, but actually being able to be adaptive to the learning needs that people had throughout the entire experience. But instead of me telling you about it, I would love to invite Wiem from the city of Bizerte to talk to us about her learning experience, both at a personal and a professional level. Wiem is going to speak in French, so if you need translation, this is, if you are listening in English and you need translation, please click on it now. And I'll hand over to Wiem and ask her, how was your experience of learning through the ASToN network? How has it shaped your work?
Bonjour à tous, en premier lieu. Je suis vraiment heureuse d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui. Un petit peu nostalgique, un petit peu émue, mais heureuse en fin de compte. Alors, le réseau ASToN, la méthodologie UrbaAct, projet ASToN d'une façon générale, les 11 villes, l'échange, l'apprentissage, tout ce que j'ai appris à travers les experts d'accompagnement du projet ASToN, à travers les experts, et je dis bien experts, hein, que ce soit les chefs de projet des villes, parce que au fur et à mesure du progrès de leur travail pendant ces trois dernières années, moi-même, je vois la remontée en capacité qu'ils ont eue. Là, je parle des représentants des villes, des membres des groupes locaux, des villes partenaires du projet ASToN. Et puis, je vais parler un petit peu d'une façon personnelle. Pour moi, le projet ASToN, c'était, là, tout à l'heure, Thierry parlait de une des composantes, ou plutôt un des livrables dont les villes étaient censées rendre en compte, c'était la feuille de route. Eh bien, ASToN, pour moi, c'est carrément une feuille de route pour la mise en place du reste de l'ensemble des projets qu'on compte mettre en place au niveau de la commune de Bizerte. Si on arrive à bien appliquer la méthodologie qu'on a appris au niveau du projet ASToN avec toutes les phases, avec tous les, et à bien exploiter tous les outils, eh bien, je suis sûre qu'on va arriver à bien réussir tous nos projets. Sur le plan professionnel, c'était une très belle ouverture, une très belle découverte, un excellent voyage d'apprentissage. On ne cesse pas d'apprendre avec ASToN, avec des moyens de stress, des hauts et des bas avec les deadlines et avec les livrables qu'on doit fournir à temps. Mais l'ensemble est exceptionnel. Moi-même, par rapport à mon travail, à ma carrière professionnelle, même par rapport à mes collègues ou au niveau de la commune, ils voient très bien que j'ai vraiment changé. Il y a une très belle remontée en compétences, il y a une très belle confiance en soi-même. Et c'est vraiment grâce à cette expérience vraiment exceptionnelle de partage, d'échange et d'apprentissage continu. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup, William. Et quand vous parlez de ce genre d'apprentissage et de confiance, quelle est la chose que vous allez ramener avec vous dans le futur de votre projet? Quelle est la chose qui va continuer à vous accompagner au-delà du projet ASToN et de ce projet spécifique?
Ok, c'est comme dit toujours Simena, c'est commencer petit et puis par la suite voir comment ça va se passer. Il ne suffit pas d'avoir le budget nécessaire ou d'avoir l'idée de projet nécessaire après l'identification de la problématique et bien l'étudier l'existant, etc. Ça ne suffit pas. L'élaboration d'un bon plan d'action assez détaillé, prendre en considération les hypothèses à pouvoir tester, prendre en considération les risques qui peuvent vous affronter lors du processus de mise en place de ce projet est vraiment exceptionnel pour pouvoir garantir le succès de ce projet. Et puis, quand c'est tout petit, l'expérimentation, c'était vraiment le top. Et d'ailleurs, du projet ASToN, j'ai déjà fait 2 expérimentations, mais dans 2 autres thématiques. Le proof of concept, l'expérimentation, commencer petit, savoir vraiment, maîtriser vraiment les choses avant de se lancer à grande échelle, ça, c'était vraiment le top. J'ai déjà testé ça hors du projet ASToN et je tiens vraiment à expérimenter l'expérimentation durant tout le reste de ma carrière professionnelle. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup, William. Merci de partager ça avec nous. Je vais changer de nouveau à l'anglais parce que je vais inviter une personne qui parle en anglais. Donc, si vous avez besoin de changer la langue, c'est le moment. I'm going to switch back to English. So if you need to come back to English, this is your moment. I'm jumping back and forth because I would like to hear from Randy from the city of Kumasi, who is an Anglophone speaker. And he's the one who actually hosted us for the ASToN event last year. And as a host of the city of Kumasi, but also as a member of the network, I would love to just ask him to share with us, you know, how was being a part of the network? How did that shape how you work, and how did it support you within your work in the city of Kumasi?
All right, thank you. And it's nice for me to have the opportunity to meet my people again. I've always wanted this to last forever, and knowing that this might be the last, but I still hope that we'll meet again. My reason for saying this is I've been a project coordinator for a couple of projects way back in so many years, but the ASToN process is different. ASToN has taught us a whole lot of things that we used to do at KMA, which was so normal. With ASToN coming in, things just changed, and we took things a little bit in a more of a coordinated and professional way. I always say that I'm a development planner heading the transport department, but I'm the coordinator for ASToN, which is a revenue mobilization activity for KMA. And I could only do this because of how the ASToN program project is structured and the kind of learning opportunities that you get and the kind of deadlines you need to meet and the kind of experimentation and the kind of family that you have. Yes, I know I have some people, I can send them some messages at any time of the day, but trust you me, I receive responses. I talk to other cities and then we try to fashion our things. So I don't know how to answer this, but ASToN has really taught me a lot of things and even improved my personal life as a development planner, as a head of transport department. And I'm telling you, not me alone, but even with the colleagues that I have at KMA who found themselves to be part of the ASToN process. It's been nice. It's been okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Randy. And I love that feeling of, the fact that you know that you can text people in the middle of the night. Hopefully that's not what you're doing, Randy, just 3 a.m. texting people. But it's that true sense of trust that, you can count on others. I'd love to ask Simina to pull up our slide to just share a couple of insights and things that we've learned along the way. And really kind of as William and Randy really spoke to, we thought about this whole experience to be the most responsive and adaptive to cities. So how can we create the right space, the right structures so that cities can learn? And so we designed a learning journey that was adaptive and responsive to the needs of cities, but also offered the structure that was needed so people knew what to expect. This is a really long program. We don't want to be sort of changing the pace or changing what people think, and people would know that every quarterly we would get together, but they would also know that they could shape what that quarter was going to be focused on, and that according to their needs, we were able to bring in different types of expertise, different types of cities coming to the forefront. And cities were able to share their insights, not just from the work that we're doing with ASToN, but also with other experiences. And it really showed that kind of by coming together, by bringing them together around themes, they're able to sort of learn at pace and together and have those kind of like 3 a.m. text messages to each other about challenges, because they would have heard the experience from their peers about what they needed and what was most useful. And that kind of enabled us to really have that space for learning. So the network not just being this connection between people, is like today, even that people can come together, they can build that connection, they know that they can sort of share what they're up to, what are the challenges that they're having, and also be able to kind of pull at really specific technical advice if they need it. And I think that what that's meant is that over the years, really there's been a base in a value and honesty and openness. How can we kind of be honest about what we're facing, not just share the kind of wonderful experiences, but also share the things that are difficult so that we can overcome them and sort of learn the tricks, even if the contexts are different and the situation is different. There's a couple of things that we did learn along the way about how we do this work. And if we just move on to the next slide, there's really that question of how do we make sure that as the needs change, that we're remaining adaptable? And that's also one of the really important things about that has been about letting some of the things go. We created some structures at the beginning that were, for example, really focused on kind of the type of problem that people were facing. Everybody in transportation get together and talk about transportation. And actually, as those projects became much more concrete, what we learned is that the structures that were in place were no longer necessarily the ones that were best serving us. So as we learned and as the project evolved, it was important to kind of launch new ways of supporting the cities, tailor even more what we were doing, but also let go of some things that we had set up. The second thing that was really important for us was really making sure that the experts, the people who were coming in with that technical expertise, that they understood, they had a depth of understanding of the problem, but we wanted to make sure that they also knew what was the method and what is the way of working that we're bringing to this, so that for the cities and for the entire experience, we have kind of a common framework of understanding. We work in a way that is focused on the problem and that is experimental. So how do we make sure that every single interaction that the cities have through this journey is really built on that? And finally, it's important to just go where people are at, in terms of both their capacity, like what are their needs, but also in terms of the actual spaces that people are at. We learned that most of the cities really communicate through WhatsApp. So that's where we met. That's where communications happen. We have a live group, people share photos. And we let go of other things that we realized weren't working as well, right? Email is not a great group communications app. And so by kind of adapting that, we were able to remove the barriers to engagement. So it felt as natural as possible for people to be able to engage in different ways. And also, which obviously COVID made complicated, we really kind of, when we could, try to get people together, whether it was all the cities or just small cohorts. We just know that the value of being in person, the value of people being in a room and connecting one another is really essential to kind of building those relationships and sustaining them beyond time. There's a lot more insights and a lot more examples on there, but there are links in the chat for you to click through if you wanna dig into those. But while you do that, I'm just gonna hand back to Abby.
Thank you so much for that, Constanza and guest Liam and Randy. It's great to hear from you. As we go through these, you said at the start, some of you, that you're here to learn, you're here to exchange experiences, you're here to understand a bit more about the ASToN experience. So do keep going with questions in the chat. If there are things you'd like to know as we go through, we do have time to tackle a couple of questions, so keep them coming. Okay. We're ready to move on then to our fourth insight that we wanted to share today. And it's my pleasure to pass over to Mathilde, who joined us sort of relatively later on in the programme, but her presence has been very much felt in the time that she's been on the ASToN project. She's the Project and Capitalisation Officer, and she's going to share with you what we've learned about our fourth insight, about testing small, failing fast, and experimentation as a tool for cities. So I'm going to pass to you, Mathilde.
Merci Abby, bonjour à toutes et à tous. Je vais parler en français, alors si vous avez besoin de l'interprétation, c'est le moment. Alors, effectivement, on en a déjà parlé un petit peu depuis le début. L'un des points forts d'ASToN, ça a été de permettre aux villes de se familiariser avec ce qu'on appelle la méthode agile et de pouvoir l'utiliser pour tester des morceaux de leur plan, de leur solution. Ce qu'on voulait tenter de faire, c'était vraiment d'accompagner les villes, de les aider à embrasser l'incertitude et à réussir à concevoir des projets qui leur permettraient d'agir sur la base de preuves, de données concrètes, qui leur permettent de s'adapter, d'itérer en fonction de ce qu'elles apprendraient et de pouvoir vraiment placer les apprentissages, les choses dont elles sont sûres au cœur de leur projet pour pouvoir progresser de la sorte. Pour ce faire, il y a eu toute une phase dans ASToN où les villes ont pu bénéficier jusqu'à 50 000 € de subventions et elles ont été accompagnées pendant 6 mois. D'abord, pour élaborer avec des coachs d'expérimentation les hypothèses qu'elles allaient tester, et ensuite pour réfléchir ensemble à la manière dont les hypothèses étaient testées et essayer de retirer le plus d'apprentissage possible et de les intégrer à leur plan d'action. Il y a eu énormément d'apprentissage, ça a été 6 mois extrêmement riches. Les villes sont très diverses, les expérimentations ont pris des formes très différentes. Et je pense que la meilleure manière de parler de l'expérimentation, c'est de donner la parole aux villes. Dans quelques secondes, on pourra entendre Farid Salako, qui est entre autres le coordinateur local ASToN à Semepoji au Bénin. Et Semepoji, dans le cadre d'ASToN, a travaillé sur la numérisation de son cadastre. Et l'expérimentation, je crois, leur a permis d'apprendre 2-3 trucs que je laisse Farid en parler.
Notre solution a été expérimentée sur une zone tampon de 50 hectares, choisie dans le village Weken de l'arrondissement de Guergué. Les premières heures de l'opération de collecte des données foncières ont été de la mer à boire à cause des pensées négatives et contradictoires de la population sur le projet. Mais très tôt, l'équipe locale a organisé plusieurs rencontres à l'endroit de ces populations, ainsi que les acteurs locaux, les sages, pour leur expliquer le bien fondé du projet. Ainsi, nous avons dénié l'outil de communication à l'assaut de toute la ville portés par la radio de proximité, soutenus par des messages ponctuels et précis, régulièrement ventilés par les crieurs publics, recrutés pour la circonstance, pour servir le village. L'impact de la communication a rapidement tout changé en bien et nous pouvons dire aisément que plus de 80% des données foncières ont été collectées dans la zone tampon. Et tout ceci, c'est grâce à l'effet de la communication. C'est grâce au message que nous avons commencé par porter à l'endroit des bénéficiaires, ce qui les a fait changer d'avis. Et ce sont eux-mêmes qui ont commencé par se mobiliser autour de la solution. Et je voudrais quand même rappeler à tout le monde que l'aspect communicationnel est un volet principal pour tout genre de projet qui se veut une réussite. Grâce à ASToN et avec tout le parcours que nous avions eu, nous pouvons dire que les apprentissages via ce réseau de 11 villes, non seulement constituent pour nous un renforcement de capacité pour les acteurs locaux que nous sommes, mais ils nous ont permis de maîtriser les concepts rédactionnels et la maîtrise de la conduite des activités et sous-activités des projets. Je dirais qu'aujourd'hui, nous sommes en mue pour la mise à l'échelle de notre solution et pourquoi pas conduire d'autres projets à l'instar de la transition numérique que ASToN a portée vers les 11 villes africaines dont ces produits bénéficiaires. Aujourd'hui, le digital reste un outil indispensable et incontournable. Et je pourrais vous dire que notre expérience avec le projet ASToN nous a permis de voir de façon concrète les prémices de ce que les e-services de la ville peuvent être en matière de mobilisation de ressources, en matière de services rendus aux usagers et de sourire vers un lendemain heureux de ville smart. Je vous remercie.
Merci à toi, Farid. Il y a plusieurs points qu'on peut retenir, outre que la musique est bien choisie. C'est que d'abord, nous, deux apprentissages qu'on retient de l'expérimentation, c'est que l'expérimentation, c'est pas un dogme. On doit surtout l'adapter aux besoins des villes et qu'on a essayé de toujours se référer au principe de l'expérimentation, à savoir l'utiliser comme un moyen d'obtenir des certitudes, ces certitudes nous permettant après d'avancer dans un projet et donc toujours de rester souple aussi par rapport à l'expérimentation. Et ensuite, la seconde chose, et c'est ce sur quoi Farid a vraiment insisté, c'est la communication, mais la communication encore plus large, c'est d'être clair sur le pourquoi. Pourquoi on fait cette expérimentation? Quelle est la vision derrière tout ça? Et en ayant cette clarté, ça nous permet en fait d'embrasser encore plus facilement l'incertitude du comment et d'emmener les parties prenantes avec nous lors des expérimentations. Il y a d'autres apprentissages qui ont été faits et je vais laisser la parole à Aminata très prochainement pour vous donner un peu de contexte. Aminata Lo de Nouakchott, merci, est aussi l'une des coordinatrices locales. Et donc, dans le cadre d'ASToN, Nouakchott a voulu faire participer les habitants à la mise en place d'un système d'adressage unique sur un certain nombre de rues intercommunales. Et avec l'expérimentation, la ville souhaitait tester à la fois l'organisation et la volonté institutionnelle de pouvoir soutenir le projet sur le long terme.
Les leçons apprises dans l'expérimentation sont nombreuses. On va en citer quelques-uns. On va parler de l'importance des données dans les projets de digitalisation ou de transition numérique. Si on n'a pas de données fiables, il est impossible de mener à bien un projet de ce genre. Et il est important de savoir les chercher, de savoir les analyser, surtout de savoir bien les utiliser, les comprendre avant de les utiliser. Nous avons aussi appris que Nouakchott, en tant que ville membre du projet ASToN, était un peu différente des autres parce que nous avons travaillé sur une problématique qui à la base faisait partie de notre prérogative et en cours de route, les données ont changé avec la création des régions et cela nous a permis aussi de ne pas changer de sujet, de ne pas laisser tomber, mais aussi d'intégrer ce volet cadre juridique dans le projet. Donc le cadre juridique, il est très important de travailler dessus Et ça, c'était vraiment une leçon que nous avons appris. Nous avons appris aussi qu'en Mauritanie, de manière générale en Afrique, les projets échouent souvent. Ce n'est pas parce qu'il n'y a pas de moyens techniques ou financiers, c'est parce qu'en général, les cadres juridiques ne sont pas bien définis, sont très contraignants. Donc ça, c'est aussi une leçon que nous avons apprise. Donc, comme dernière leçon, on va dire que il est important d'avoir une institution fédératrice comme la région de Nord, dans un territoire où il y a beaucoup d'intervenants. Et nous avons les communes, nous avons les départements sectoriels, nous avons les institutions privées dans un même territoire, ce qui donne même parfois naissance à des guerres de territoire. Donc avoir une institution comme la région qui met tout le monde autour d'une table pour discuter d'une problématique donnée et d'essayer de trouver des solutions ensemble, c'est très important. Et comme message à partager avec les autres collectivités, et il est important de se dire que c'est dans les collectivités que les choses se passent, que les changements s'effectuent et que les collectivités, malgré le manque de moyens et le manque de ressources humaines, doivent essayer d'aller au-delà de ça, ne pas en faire un obstacle, travailler pour trouver des solutions pour les populations malgré ces contraintes-là.
C'est mieux. Merci Aminata. Un troisième point qu'on peut retenir au sujet de l'expérimentation, c'est que l'expérimentation, ça peut faire peur. On plonge dans l'incertain, c'est souvent très inconfortable. Et une manière qu'on a trouvée avec les villes justement de créer une safe place pour pouvoir travailler, c'était de concevoir l'expérimentation comme un outil pour ses objectifs, un outil pour son propre travail. Et ça permettait ainsi de l'utiliser au fur et à mesure et d'avoir plus de facilité à l'intégrer au processus qui était déjà en place. Et enfin, les villes ASToN, la plupart d'entre elles, pour ne pas dire toutes, sont des villes pionnières qui se sont lancées dans la digitalisation de services municipaux, dans la création d'outils qui n'existaient pas. Ça fait peur, c'est effrayant, on est tout seul. Et le fait de travailler en réseau, de s'entourer de gens qui sont dans la même situation, ça a permis vraiment de créer un groupe, de se donner du courage, mais aussi de se supporter, de s'encourager et de se donner des feedbacks, de s'inspirer les uns des autres. Et ça a été, je crois, très important et très inspirant pour toutes les villes ASToN tout au long du processus d'expérimentation, de voir qu'elles n'étaient pas toutes seules, que d'autres aussi travaillaient des fois traverser des moments un peu plus compliqués et de pouvoir s'appeler, de pouvoir demander conseil, de pouvoir demander de l'aide. Ça, c'était vraiment important. Bien sûr, on a plein de points, de choses qu'on retient de l'expérimentation, mais si on pouvait refaire, il y aurait aussi des choses qu'on ferait peut-être différemment. Déjà, on commencerait avant. On commencerait l'expérimentation avant parce que l'expérimentation, encore une fois, c'est être incertain, c'est se lancer dans des choses qu'on ne maîtrise pas forcément, c'est un changement d'état d'esprit, c'est l'acquisition de nouveaux outils, c'est développer des nouvelles méthodes. Ça prend beaucoup de temps. Certaines des villes ont eu pas mal de difficultés à élaborer les hypothèses qu'elles voulaient tester. Parfois, ces hypothèses semblaient être certaines, et on pouvait penser qu'il n'y avait rien à tester, en fait, que c'était bon, on pouvait se lancer dans le projet directement. Or, l'expérimentation, ça a apporté tellement d'apprentissage, c'est tellement riche comme expérience, que si on avait commencé avant, on aurait peut-être pu faire un second cycle d'expérimentation et donc en retirer encore plus d'apprentissage et aller encore plus loin, itérer encore plus longtemps. Ensuite, la deuxième chose qu'on aurait faite, c'est essayer d'avoir un lien encore plus fort entre l'expérimentation et l'élaboration du plan d'action. Le lien, il existait, le lien, il a été présenté, mais parce que justement, l'expérimentation, c'était difficile à commencer. Une fois que les villes étaient lancées, c'était un petit peu difficile de les arrêter. La plupart ont d'ailleurs continué à expérimenter et continuent encore aujourd'hui à récolter des données qui informent leur projet. Mais c'était très compliqué de revenir sur une partie un peu plus administrative, une partie un peu plus rédactionnelle, et de se dire que là, maintenant, il était temps d'élaborer des plans et d'arrêter d'être dans le concret. On pourrait en parler pendant des heures, l'expérimentation. Ça a été 6 mois concrets d'expérimentation, mais ça a été des mois de préparation et encore des mois après pour essayer d'en retirer le plus d'apprentissage. Alors, je peux que vous inviter à aller vous promener sur notre hub de connaissances, où vous pourrez lire l'expérimentation, le catalogue d'expérimentation, dans lequel vous avez toutes les expérimentations qui ont été menées par les villes. Vous pourrez aussi, si vous n'avez pas autant de temps, regarder notre motion design ou encore lire des thématiques, enfin des études de cas précises qui vous montreront l'impact concret de ces expérimentations. Je te repasse la parole, Abby.
Thank you so much, Mathilde, and to your guests as well. And we'll share the link to the Experimentation Hub shortly in the chat for you to visit. Okay, now we'll move on to our fifth and final insight for today. And I have to say we're doing very well on time. So well done, everyone. That means we will have some time for questions. If you have any, do let us know in the chat. Keep the chat coming. But our final sort of, I don't know if you'd call it an insight, but sort of question to ourselves, and we're still building the insights on this one, is did this actually work? So Samina's going to take back the floor for this one to look at what's been the impact of this initiative and what have we learned?
Thank you, Abby. And yes, we are getting closer to the end of this session. So yes, if you have questions, if you have comments that you would like to share, go ahead. As a true experimentation, as ASToN was, we found ourselves asking towards the end of this project, did this actually work? In total honesty with you, when we started ASToN, we had no idea if this project would actually going to function, and we made quite a long list of assumptions that you can also see on the screen with regards to the things that needed to happen in order for the project to function. First, there were questions about the network as such, about cities coming together as a group of peers and exchanging in a context that is built on confidence and honest exchanges. We had no idea. We, as Thierry was saying, we knew this was working with European cities, but we had no idea if this would be the case elsewhere. We were also wondering with regards to the method, the tools that we were providing, would this be relevant? And not only just at the beginning of the project, but throughout the whole 3 years journey. The same questions were also raised with regards to what was happening locally, about the local authorities' commitment at the same time for the learning process, but also with regards to the local group to maintain a continuous commitment throughout the project. So those were assumptions that we made along about the process, and we also made assumptions with regards to the end results. We thought that the action plans should be adopted by political authorities, and local resources should be used to scale up at least certain experiments. And we thought that also deliverables should be implemented with strong technical steering, and also backed up by political support and also external financial support. And while it's fair to say, and I think that you all agree with me based on what we heard for the last 1 hour now, most of those assumptions were validated. But our feeling, and again, this is just a feeling, we don't have an indicator that goes with that, is that we don't have a huge hurrah to share with you. And there are several reasons for that. Most of the cities are still looking for external funding. Again, the projects are very strongly backed by local municipalities. They already secured internal funding. In the chat, you heard already from Niamey and Bamako that are having exchanges with the World Bank and other international organizations to finance their action plans, but that is still ongoing. And also, with regards to ASToN's continuation as a program, that is a reflection that is still ongoing. So there are maybe less good news that as an ambitious program as we are, we would have liked to share with you. And the next slide contains a quote that I will let you read for yourselves, that comes from Pulikano Ayambazwe. Every time I hope I pronounce his name right. Pulikano joined the ASToN project a little bit later on as the local leader for the city of Kigali, and Pulikano made a really tremendous difference for Kigali, in the sense that Pulikano is the head of the employment center, and the focus for Kigali was about bridging the digital divide. So through the experiment, Kigali worked on rehabilitating a space for an ICT center in the rural part of the town, an ICT center that provides, ever since October, for now several hundred people, trainings on basic digital literacy elements. And as you can see from the quote, with the experimentation, they were able to prove the necessity, the usefulness of such a center. Unfortunately, for the time being, they haven't been able to secure funding, but they know that the project is strongly backed by the municipality, because they consider the project as highly relevant. So again, this is a case where it worked. We have results. We also know that there is still some road, some street to advance on in the future. So also, if there are any international organizations, donors in the audience, don't hesitate to contact not only Pulikano but all the cities that are in the network, the people that you already heard from. Before we close, I would also like to share with you some of the learnings that came from our perspective with regards to ASToN as a whole, and what we would have done differently, what we learned in the process. I think that the biggest element is the fact that we are a capacity building program. We invested in the human capital, and sometimes the whole project, because of human resources, was led by one person, the person that we like to call a pioneer, that have improved confidence and evidence in what works. We also realized that it's much more sustainable by working with teams, because when that person, pioneer, if they leave, the whole project falls. So being able to invest both in pioneers and in team, that would lead to even greater sustainability of projects such as ASToN. We learned it the hard way. We need to accept that a framework such as ours is not necessarily compatible with all the city cases. We spend a lot of time, and I think this is something that is common also with URBACT. We spent a lot of time trying to bring all cities more or less up to speed, but we did need to accept the fact that some cities are not able to deliver action plans or be part of experimentations, and that is for reasons that are not within their control. And again, this goes back to our third learning, if I can say so, which is the fact that the context matter, and what we call an enabling environment, factoring in political instability, social unrest, also extreme weather conditions. In 2020, Niamey was subject to extreme flooding, which stopped the city for several months. Those kind of elements need to be factored in while starting a project like ASToN. Of course, not to mention COVID. So these are just a couple of the learnings for us from this wealth of experiences. Of course, it's very hard to sum it all up all in 90 minutes. I do invite you to go through all the wealth of content and knowledge that is on the hub. And before we close this session, I would like us to hear from one more city, a testimonial coming from the city of Bamako, and more specifically from Amadou Yalkuye, who is the Deputy Director of the Regional Development Agency, and who has been part of ASToN really from the beginning. And Amadou will share with you a little bit of the ups and downs, the challenges that they faced from the beginning, and where they are now. Amadou, if you're here with us and if you can hear me properly, the floor is yours.
Bonjour tout le monde, je suis avec vous, je suis avec toutes les villes et ravi de participer à cette session de clôture. J'espère qu'il sera une ouverture pour nous, villes membres du réseau ASToN. Simina a parlé tout à l'heure de contexte en mettant l'accent sur Niamey. Je ne cache à personne que Bamako a vécu pendant ces 3 années, on va dire, le pays, parce que qu'on le veuille ou pas, on est dans un contexte global. Et qu'on le veuille ou pas, la situation politique et la situation nationale, et dernièrement, les relations entre les pays jouent beaucoup sur la dynamique de nos projets. Effectivement, on avait été frappé par la crise Covid. La Covid nous a eu parce que elle est survenue au moment où on n'avait pas encore pu nouer une dynamique locale d'équipe. Donc, on était dans les débuts de préparation de l'équipe locale de projet. Avec la mise en place du groupe global, la Covid est tombée avant que les liens ne soient resserrés. Et ce qui nous a mis un gros coup. Les autres villes aussi ont suivi des visites de l'équipe de coordination d'ASToN. On avait programmé la visite. Je rappelle que Thierry, Simina et les autres ont même le visa de Bamako dans leur passeport. Malheureusement, ils n'ont pas pu effectuer le déplacement parce que ça a coïncidé avec le coup d'État qui est venu au Mali. Mais malgré cette situation de coup d'État et de fermeture des frontières, on s'était arrangé avec l'équipe locale à programmer une deuxième visite qui est tombée avec un deuxième coup d'État. Donc vraiment, on a eu du mal à démarrer. Mais que cela ne tienne, on a pu quand même prendre des raccourcis grâce à la souplesse aussi de la méthodologie ASToN pour pouvoir rattraper et s'adapter et aussi essayer dans la mesure du possible, de notre manière, de s'aligner aux autres villes membres du projet ASToN. Et l'autre aspect aussi que je veux souligner, c'était la maturité numérique de la ville de Bamako, qui était très faible à travers notre diagnostic, parce que nous disposons d'un petit service informatique au sein de la municipalité et qui n'est pas au centre de l'administration municipale. En gros, il n'était que 2 personnes. Alors nous, l'avantage qu'on a pu tisser dans ce contexte difficile, sachant qu'au niveau de la municipalité, on n'a pas de ressources humaines hyper qualifiées, nous avons mis en place un groupe local qu'on a élargi au secteur privé, à l'université et aux zones start-up qui sont au niveau de notre environnement immédiat. Et donc, immédiatement, quand nous sommes parvenus à les mettre dans notre groupe, ils ont apporté une expertise supplémentaire, ce qui a monté en puissance, on va dire, la compétence des autres membres du groupe local. Et c'est aussi qui facilite l'expertise des autres services de la municipalité. Il est plus facile que des jeunes venant de l'extérieur, du monde numérique, viennent donner des idées ou faire des diagnostics qu'un autre service de la municipalité vienne fuiner dans un autre service, sachant que nous, on travaille sur la question de la mobilisation et de la fiscalité locale. Donc, on a su mobiliser cette dynamique locale au niveau du groupe local, qu'on a étalé aussi cette dynamique au niveau des différents services techniques de la municipalité. Donc, qui travaillaient en silo. Donc, avec la méthodologie, on travaillait tous en groupe et en équipe. Et il y avait une certaine synergie d'action entre les différentes structures de la municipalité du district de Bamako. Et ce qui nous a permis, malgré ces différentes adversités, qu'on n'a pas eu de visite de ville, à quand même développer et co-développer, on va dire, une solution web et mobile pour la gestion d'une taxe de la municipalité de Bamako, qui est la vignette municipale, qui touche environ autour de 600 000 personnes au niveau de la ville de Bamako, où il y avait un service après-vente inexistant, pas de base de données pour la suite et même pour la planification de la municipalité pour les prochaines années, il n'y avait pas de données. Donc, ils faisaient de la planification au pif et en fin d'année, on se retrouvait avec des invendus et des produits à détruire. Donc, on a pu indiquer toute cette problématique. Et l'autre aspect qu'on a pu faire également, c'est expérimenter notre application que nous avons développée. Donc, expérimenter en circuit fermé avec les services au sein de la municipalité. Ensuite, expérimenter en circuit fermé toujours, mais élargi à une certaine composante de la société civile, qui sont des organisations de la société civile qu'on a associées à notre dynamique. Alors, in fine, on est arrivé parce qu'on avait un objectif bien donné qui nous a...
Amadou?
Dans l'objectif, notre mission, c'était vraiment de mobiliser davantage des ressources financières dans l'objectif de faire face aux services sociaux de base du district de Bamako. Donc, on n'a pas perdu de ligne. Donc, on est resté sur la mobilisation des ressources financières, mais avec derrière un service après-vente qui est offert aux usagers et des fonds qui vont être mobilisés pour pouvoir pérenniser la solution. Aujourd'hui, sur le financement de notre solution, il faut aussi apprécier l'appropriation. Une fois que la solution a été implémentée et présentée au conseil municipal, le conseil municipal a adopté la solution et a voté sa mise à l'échelle. Ça a été un acte politique fort. Le deuxième acte politique fort, ça a été de s'inscrire dans une dynamique moyen et long terme. Cette expérience qu'on a vécue avec la vignette, avec la méthodologie ASToN, comment l'implémenter sur les autres services de la municipalité qui ont demandé à rejoindre la dynamique avant qu'on commence l'expérimentation CG. Donc aujourd'hui, dans cette même dynamique, malgré le fait que la municipalité a décidé de financer la solution expérimentée, qui est la plateforme web de la vignette, le prêt de la Banque mondiale est un acquis aujourd'hui, je vous informe. C'est-à-dire l'État malien le prêt est signé. Aujourd'hui, la transition numérique est inscrite et grâce aux documentations fournies par ASToN, Bamako est est la seule ville bénéficiaire déjà du financement. Mais la question qui est en suspens, qu'on est en train de répondre, c'est comment, point par point, priorité de la ville, on va pouvoir financer au niveau de ASToN. J'aurais aussi terminé par un témoignage du conseil municipal. Le conseil municipal actuel de la ville de Bamako a bientôt 15 ans. 15 ans à cause des crises multiples, parce qu'ils sont en fin de mandat, mais ça a été renouvelé à cause de la situation d'instabilité. Et quand on avait présenté le projet ASToN, une élue a dit qu'en 10-15 ans de conseil, c'est le meilleur projet qui a été présenté dans la salle. Je pense que ça a été, j'étais avec les membres du groupe local, ça a été une grande satisfaction pour nous. Et l'autre satisfaction pour nous, c'est que dans le plan de développement local et social culturel de la ville, qu'on appelle PDSEC ici, la municipalité a inscrit une ligne pour aller vraiment de façon plus large vers un document de stratégie de transition numérique budgétisé. L'enjeu aujourd'hui, ça sera de mobiliser les fonds. Et le dernier aspect, c'est le maire du district de Bamako qui souhaiterait vraiment inviter ses pairs villes membres du réseau à Bamako. Comme on n'a pas parvenu à recevoir l'équipe de coordination à Bamako, on espère cette fois-ci qu'on arrivera à organiser une rencontre avec les autres villes membres du réseau et l'équipe de coordination pour pouvoir pérenniser ASToN, transformer ASToN en échange et en école d'apprentissage entre nous, villes membres du réseau actuel, et pourquoi ne pas à l'avenir l'élargir aux autres membres du réseau.
Merci, merci pour ce témoignage, Amadou. I'm gonna switch back to English now. We are getting really close to the end, and before I pass it over to Abby for the very final messages of ASToN, I would just like to, I said we don't have a big yay, a big hurrah to share with you all, but ASToN is also made of smaller but many hurrahs like the one that Amadou shared. So while Abby is prepping for the final bit. I would invite all the city leaders, the city representatives from ASToN to take a moment and to write down in chat which is their hurrah moment from ASToN. May it be when we all started and we first met in Kampala back in 2019. Was it when the local group reunited after COVID, the results of the experimentation? Take a moment and let's say that in 10 seconds, we all start writing in the chat, English, French, doesn't matter, which was your hurrah moment from ASToN. So if you're ready, I think you can start writing down your hurrah ASToN moment, your Yuppie moment. Let's see what comes. Okay, so what do we have coming in? We have definitely the meetings, right? The meeting in Kampala, where some of the cities and the representatives that are still with us today were there. Agnes says the online learning events. We definitely threw a lot of content in your direction throughout those meetings. The external events. Thank you, Julia. Julia contributed from UN Habitat to that event, and it was a great learning experience for also the cities. Yes, again the Kigali event, Kumasi, loads of great memories. The site visits that we did, of course, the zip line when we were in Kigali. We had also a dedicated meeting just with the local leaders, the local coordinators in Ben Guerir. So there was definitely a lot going on throughout these 3 years. I'm sure that messages will continue to pop up, but Abby, I'm definitely passing it back to you now for the closing remarks.
Great, thank you, Samina, and thank you, Amadou. It's so great to see those coming in. We've had, when the experiment plan was validated by the technical committee of ASToN, just come in. So yeah, keep them coming. It's really great to see. So thank you all for joining us. It's been really cool to see. We've had Casablanca to Cote d'Ivoire, we've had Spain, Semipoji, Nepal, really a global audience today for this Africa event and network. And we've heard from North, South, East, West Africa, which is the ASToN way. Really, we always hear about a broad mix of cultures and ways of working. So there are just 3 things that I wanted to share with you before we wrap up today. Firstly, we've shared the link a number of times, but I just wanted to help you make sense of the Knowledge Hub that we have been sharing. So there are 3 parts of the Knowledge Hub. We're sharing all our trade secrets in the hope that you can build on all that we've learned and not have to start from scratch if you're tackling similar kind of work or want to embark on something similar. So for that network level, you'll find on the Knowledge Hub there's a blueprint for anyone who's interested in how do you run a network of cities. So for network level, check out the blueprint. That's got really what it says on the tin, a blueprint of how you might approach building a peer network of cities that want to learn together. For a city level, there's a handbook which teaches, sort of instills some of the things that we've been learning along the way about how you do this work of experimentation. And sort of really looking at how you sort of work through your city authority to get this kind of thing up and running. And for anyone on an individual level looking to run an experiment, we have an experiment guide, which through stories from some of the cities you've heard from today and others across the network, we tell stories of the experiments, but also break down experiment design. So it gets quite technical for you to learn from as well. So do check those out. The second thing that I wanted to share with you is an invitation, really, and I thought I'd just sort of recap why something like ASToN is so important and why specifically ASToN is so important. You've heard just there from Hamadou about sharing the experience from Bamako of the difference that it makes to the municipality, to the life experience of the residents of Bamako, and to him as a person as well. And that was quite a strong theme through today. In ASToN, we set out to build a skill set, but also a mindset. And Alison, I loved your comment in the chat earlier. Thank you for sharing that about how this has been a sustainable behavior change. And that's really part of the legacy, you might call it, about, you know, one of the things that we hope to leave behind and that we've really heard from today. So why is it important? I find this such an interesting area, you know, for Africa. It really is the center of the world's urban future. And by the end of this century, there's going to be 13 of the world's 20 biggest urban areas in Africa. So city issues in Africa are pressing issues that impact all of us. And the ASToN network of African cities has really been sort of a testament to this, to the sort of creativity and the optimism and that sort of real constructive frustration of people who work hard every day in these cities to make lives for themselves and for their colleagues and for their residents better. And so that's really why a network like this matters, because it's a future that affects us all. So as you can see, you know, a network is nothing without its people. This has been really all about connecting people and connecting people to learn with and from each other. So first of all, I'd like to say a huge thank you to all of the ASToN cities for everything. We can't sum it up in one sentence, but you know what that's all about. But really, this has been a people project as much as the technical expertise, and I think that's really important to note. And that's really important to know if you want to embark on something like this, that it's people first. Technical stuff, of course, important, but I would say that comes second. So if you're interested in launching a network like this, do talk to us. The ASToN Secretariat team are around until the end of March. Samina is going to share a slide in a moment with the contact details on. And so please drop us a note if there's something that's interested you today, if there's something that's still a question that's unanswered from today. We would absolutely love to hear from you. And you know, if you disagree, also tell us, we want to know. So if you're interested in launching a network, do contact us. And thirdly, I just wanted to say a thank you. First of all, thank you to every one of you who's come along. Thank you to friends that we already knew, but thank you if you've never met us or heard about us before. It's been really great to see some new names online today. So please, let's keep talking. I'd like to say thank you to all of the technical experts, some of you in the room today who have joined us along the journey, some of you sort of ongoing and some of you just for one-off, but technical experts, Samstad team, Brink team, thank you so much. And I finally want to say a huge thank you to ASToN Secretariat, because without you, none of this would have been possible. Thierry, Samina, Mathilde, and I've seen Joyce has joined as well. So big thank you to everyone. Thank you for joining today. Hopefully this is a continuation of the conversation. Au revoir and not goodbye. And so we'll pause it there for now. We'll invite the cities to stay online. We're going to close with the cities after this call. But do keep in touch, and thanks for everything.
Thank you, Abby. Goodbye, everyone.
Merci à tous.